I'm Dr. Rachel Levy. I'm Executive Director of the North Carolina State University Data Science Academy and Professor of Mathematics. Thanks to the North Carolina School of Science and Mathematics for inviting me here today to talk to you about what kindergartners taught me about mathematical modeling and data science. My first mathematical modeling experience that I remember is from elementary school. My teacher told us that we were going to have to spend an entire week on part of the playground that was roped off. We weren't going to be able to talk to kids in any of the other classes, and we were going to have to plan our food for the entire week. So I remember breaking into teams, figuring out what everybody liked to eat, scouring the newspapers for what we were going to buy, what was on sale, what we could afford with our budget, and planning it all out for the week. What could we fit in our cooler? What were we going to be able to cook on the fire if we could figure out how to build one? And how were we going to make it for the whole week to feed all of us? As a young person, I was probably in 3rd or 4th grade. It felt really empowering to realize that we could make all these decisions, do all this planning, and plan for the week. And it went really well. At the end of the week, our teacher said she was pretty surprised that no one stole the food ahead of time. I know that she said that we did fine with the cooking, and there weren't too many fights over much during the week, even though we were all isolated on the island. So this was an extremely memorable experience for me, and I really think it laid the groundwork for things that I would do in the future. The next time I remember doing math modeling, I was a senior undergraduate at Oberlin College, and I was really, really fortunate that one of my professors, Bruce Pollock Johnson, brought us to NASA to work with Dr. Sylvia Hood Washington on a project to try to model the energy usage for the not even yet built International Space Station. This was so exciting. We got to put our badges on. We felt really important because we were going to NASA, and they even told us at the end of the project that some of the ideas that we had come up with as a group were new to them and that they might try to implement them. So this was incredibly wonderful for us as undergraduates, and it really made me think, would I want to do this for my career? But at the same time, I was really holding on to some math shame. What do I mean by math shame? A couple of times in high school and college, I had experiences where something seemed too scary and too challenging, and I had backed away from it. Or maybe I just hadn't done as well as I wanted to, and then I decided I was going to try to do things that were less challenging so that I could be more successful. And in some ways, I think my academic life rewarded me for playing it safe, but I can also see a lot of times in my career that if I had stuck it out and tried to do the harder things, I would have really advanced in a different kind of way. And I think I really needed some different kinds of support and encouragement in order to feel confident to take on challenges, even if I was feeling in the moment like I couldn't do it or like I was a failure. If I tell someone I'm a mathematician, they'll tell me about times that they felt like they couldn't do mathematics, or, oh, I thought I was good at mathematics until this happened. So why are so many people carrying math shame? When you do math in school, what happens? Either you get a check mark, yay, it was right, or you get a red X on your work that says, you didn't do so well. And I think those red marks in some ways act like little cuts that never heal. And I see a lot of people walking through life experiencing these feelings that math has rejected them, has told them they're not good enough, and made them feel like math doesn't belong to them. When you see kids' artwork, a lot of times when you look at a kid's artwork, you'll think, I don't know what that is. It's a cute drawing, but I don't know what that is. A kid says, it's an elephant, and you're like, I don't see it. You might say, oh, tell me about your elephant, or show me, and the kid will show you, oh, these are the eyes, this is the trunk, this is the legs. And a lot of times when a kid explains their artwork to you, they can help you see things that you might not as an adult have seen yourself. I think it's the same thing with mathematics and data science. A lot of times people have the capacity, especially when they're familiar with the situation, to use information and understand how that information is going to be valuable to them, how they can interpret it, how they can use it in that context. But if you just ask them to formally write it down, sometimes people are going to have a really hard time doing that. And instead, if you just ask them what they're thinking, they're able to tell you a lot more. It may turn out that you are actually doing data science in your life in a way that you might not recognize. For example, you might ask a question like, how much toilet paper should I buy next time I go to the grocery store? Well, the answer is it depends. And that is true with most data science and mathematical modeling questions as well. It depends on the context. If you're trying to solve the problem for me of why I'm going to buy toilet paper and how much toilet paper I should buy, you might ask me who I'm buying it for. Or does it matter what kind I buy? Does it have to be extra soft or can it be single ply? You might ask, how much budget do I have to buy toilet paper? How much room do I have to store it? If I buy a lot of it, can I buy it in bulk and get it at a better price? And if so, is that what I want to do? And then maybe you might want to know what's worse, for me to buy too much or too little. At Harvey Mudd College as a professor of mathematics, I got to solve a lot of industrial problems with students for many different companies. So I'll just tell you about 3 that we solved that you might find a little bit interesting and give you some sense of the variety of things you can solve with data science. What mixture of food storage containers should a company buy so that it can be able to handle the food that's coming in, whether it's a big bumper harvest or just a small harvest that year, when you have a variety of things coming in? It turns out that if you store things in huge containers, the quality of the food goes down. And if you store things in smaller containers, you can have a higher quality food. But smaller containers are much, much more expensive than big containers. So this was an optimization problem. A lot of times in calculus, students study optimization. When we started trying to solve this problem, there were so many variables. It turned out that the kind of solution we were thinking about would take way too long to run, even on a very powerful computer. So we had to really simplify the problem and go back to the client and say, hey, can we solve a simpler problem for you and try to find something that's feasible so that you could recalculate this as your harvest is coming in? A second problem we worked on is satellite orientations. And it turns out that if you are off by just a small fraction of a degree, people might lose their internet. So in this problem, we used ideas from engineering, we used ideas from differential equations, from control theory, and it was a really fun problem to solve. And again, the company said, oh, you brought us an idea we hadn't thought about before. We're going to take that back and see if we can make that work. A third problem was anomaly detection. Once you have data coming in, a big question is, when is this stream of data normal? And when has something gone really bad or weird so that you need to wake someone up and make them fix it, or find somebody who can figure out what the problem is? Sometimes a stream of data is weird because something really weird actually happened. Maybe there was a holiday and all of a sudden there was a lot more traffic or a lot less traffic. That isn't something someone needs to fix. It's just a feature of the fact that it was a different kind of day. But then other times, it may be that something broke down and the traffic isn't coming through because something actually went wrong in the system. After working with undergraduates for a while on these kinds of real problems and remembering back to the power of my own experience as an undergraduate at NASA and also my experience on the island as an elementary school student, I kept wondering, is this kind of learning something that we could be doing more of with kids in elementary school? I was very lucky to be able to work with some great collaborators with a grant from the National Science Foundation and some teachers from Pomona Unified School District in Pomona, California, to look at how teachers could interact with their students and do mathematical modeling and some data science. One of the teachers, Robin Stankiewicz van der Zanden, decided to keep studying her class, and she started recording what she was doing with her students in her class. So what I'm going to share with you next are some of the lessons that Robin's kindergarten class taught us about how much our youngest learners can do in data science, in mathematical and statistical modeling and thinking that really relates to the kinds of problems we solve in the workplace. Robin took a story called Mouse Count, which is a story that many teachers use in order to do mathematical kinds of problems. In Mouse Count, there's a snake, and snake is very hungry and wants to eat some mice. And in the way most teachers use this story is they say, okay, the snake has 3 mice, but the snake really wants to eat 10 mice. How many more mice does the snake eat? And the students count up from 3. They may use manipulatives and figure out 3 plus what is 10. In the end, I must tell you that the mice get away. So no mice were harmed in this story. What Robin did that was a little different is she had learned in our studying of mathematical modeling that sometimes if you ask more open questions where there isn't just one right answer, like 3 plus 7 is 10, where all the students are supposed to get the answer 7, sometimes you can elicit new kinds of thinking in your students that you might not even realize they were capable of. So what did her kindergartners teach us? Robin posed the question that Snake was very hungry and he had 5 mice in the jar, but he really wanted more. So how many more mice should Snake get so that he won't be hungry anymore? The first thing we learned is that kindergartners rarely eat alone. So even though Robin was trying to ask questions about Snake eating these mice, the kids kept saying, well, what about Snake's family? We need to talk about Snake and his family. Snake needs to eat to feed his family. And so no matter how many times she posed the question, the answers she would get were about Snake and his family. And so we saw the ways in which these young students were bringing their own experiences and ideas into their math problems and felt empowered to do that. So you see here a student writes, the mice are small, his family is helping, the family is big, they are. And you see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This student thought that the Snake needed 6 more mice in order to feed himself and his family. Another lesson we learned is that while that Snake needed 6 mice to feed his family, sometimes 1 is enough. So in this problem, you see a student has drawn a snake on the left and 1 mouse on the right. And one thing we did in order to understand what these students were thinking is that in addition to looking at what they wrote, we recorded their voices. Remember I said that sometimes people, if you try to ask them to write down their thinking in mathematics, it's very hard, even in a context they know well, to write it down in a formal way. But if you just have them talk about it, often they can explain their thinking in a way that will surprise you. So this student said, if you only have 1 mouse and it's big, Snake will only need 1. This is pretty incredible actually for an elementary school and a kindergarten student to say, because this is an example of proportional reasoning. Proportional reasoning is something we have trouble getting. 6th graders, 7th graders, adults, this is something we really have trouble sometimes getting people to think about. And this came up in more than one problem. Later, when kids were talking about cookies later, they said the same thing. If you have a big cookie, you can chop it. They were already talking about fractions and you only need 1. But if you have little cookies, you're going to need a lot of them. Another task Robin worked on with her students had to do with Mr. Pete, which is the name of her husband, and her daughter Faith, who was having a birthday. She said that at this birthday party there would be 2 adults, 2 big kids, and 2 little kids, and cupcakes were regular size with chocolate frosting. How many cupcakes should there be for the party? They had some information, 2 adults, 2 big kids, and 2 little kids, but they could think about how many cupcakes there should be for this party. Again, you'll see instances of proportional reasoning. So here you see the big kids get 3 each, the adults get 3 each, and the little kids get 2 each. A lot of times when she was talking to kids about food, they were really curious about the leftovers. They wanted to know, how hungry are you? They wanted to know, do you like the food? And they always wanted to know if there were leftovers that they could share with somebody that was hungry that didn't have enough. Another thing we learned from the kindergartners is that they definitely bring their own experience into these mathematical modeling situations. One kid said, oh, you better have 7 cupcakes because Auntie shows up always to the party, whether you invited her or not. So for these students, food was really providing a meaningful context, something everyone had experienced and could relate to. She did try a task with an aquarium. The students didn't have a lot of experience of what an aquarium was. It was a total flop. So it is important that with mathematical modeling that people are able to bring their own experience to the situation. I hope you'll see that the openness of these problems, where the students had some openness in the beginning where they could reconstruct the problem as they needed, openness in the middle because they had different ways of solving the problem with manipulatives, with symbols, with their words, with drawing, with pictures. And open at the end because they came up with different answers from each other, allowed them to feel like they were doing mathematics, they were doing thinking, they were using the data, the information they were given, they were thinking about the constraints, and then they were also being creative about solutions if they needed to exceed the constraints that were given. Recording their voices in addition to looking at their written work was really crucial for them to communicate their understanding. And then at the end, the kids said, instead of a lot of math classes where you think of it as an individual sport, these kids said, we're getting smart. And I loved that they were saying, we're getting smart, that they really saw this, even though they each had their individual solutions, they talked about them so much as a group and did some problem solving together that they really felt like this is an activity where we're getting smart. These days, I think a lot about data science, which to me includes mathematical modeling, statistical modeling, computational thinking, communication, domain knowledge. Data science cuts across business, across all different disciplines, and really in everyone's work, practically in any field. I think everyone can be a mathambassador and go out and talk about the power of mathematics, how important it is with all of the data in today's everyday world, that people be able to go look at data critically, be able to interpret it, bring tools to bear, mathematical, statistical, computational, visualization, physicalization, interpretation. I think that everyone has this opportunity to improve over time their ability to look at data. But even our youngest learners show that if it's in a context that is meaningful to a person, we have this ability to make sense of what we think and to communicate it to others. I hope you'll join me in going out into the world, encouraging our littlest people to do mathematics, to do statistics, to learn computation, to think about data, to bring their own understanding to bear in a situation, and also to talk to other people to get other perspectives. Thank you very much for listening, and I appreciate your time.